Has Luther Burden's career been a slight disappointment? Well, one prominent Missouri guy thinks so, and I gotta say I'm shocked and appalled. So let's explain right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And you can get started this season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we got to talk about the biggest priorities, I think, in the offseason. It's coming up pretty quickly. The portal's going to open in just a few short weeks, believe it or not. So we got to talk about the future. But you know what? Speaking of the future, I think Luther Burden's career at Missouri obviously going to be wrapping up here shortly, as is Brady Cook's as well. And I got to say, I think those guys are definitely joined at the hip forever. I'll talk about that in a little bit. What I really want to get to, though, I was kind of surprised when I was reading Gabe DeArmond's 10 Thoughts this morning, as I always do every Monday. And I was kind of shocked when Gabe sort of intimated that Luther Burden's career has been a slight disappointment. I'll put it in full context here. Here's what Gabe said. He said he's going to finish in the top 6 in catches, yards, and touchdowns in Missouri history, but it feels like there could have been more. He's been a really, really good college player, but I'm not sure it was possible for him to live up to the hype. The comp here is Blaine Gabbert. Ultimately, I think their legacies also are defined by what happens when they leave. Both became celebrated recruits, probably 2 of the 3 most celebrated in program history. Both put up really good numbers and are among the top 5 at their position in school history statistically, despite not playing the full number of years they could have. But both had Missouri fans dreaming such lofty dreams that somehow when they leave, I think a lot of people won't fully recognize their accomplishments. So some good context there. It's not as though Gabe was trying to take a huge steamer on top of Luther Burden's head or anything like that. I guess I was just surprised, maybe just by the general sentiment there, that there may be a lot of Missouri fans that think Luther Burden had a disappointing career at Mizzou. Well, I'll say this. After 1,200 yards receiving last season, I could see how you would think, hey, 574 receiving so far this year with probably just 2 regular season games to go. Just 2 total games, I should say, because, well, I think the bowl game is looking like a long shot for Burden at this point with Missouri out of the playoff picture. But regardless, on paper, I could see how you would say that's disappointing. Certainly his yards per catch are down significantly this year as well. But I got to say, I think that is a function more of the Missouri offense as a whole. The Missouri offense had a lot of challenges this year. We can lay blame here, there, and yon, and there's probably, I've maintained, I think there's plenty of blame to be dusted around everywhere this season, from the coaches to the players. I think everybody deserves a tiny bit of the blame there, heck, even Luther Burden himself included. But I got to say, the idea that he's been a disappointment, well, I'll just say at least not to me. For the last 2 years, I believe that Luther Burden has been the best player on the Missouri Tigers. Reasonable people can disagree with me perhaps on that, but I think it's pretty clear, just to my eyes, from studying this young man closely the last 2 seasons as I have. To me, he's the best player out there. Offense, defense, take your pick. And to Gabe's point about how his NFL future is going to impact how people view him at Missouri, I totally get that. I don't think it's fair, by the way, but it is reality. Take somebody like Tyler Hansbrough, for instance, the old Poplar Bluff resident, of course, and high school player who ultimately spurned Missouri to go to North Carolina. Well, believe it or not, some of you youngsters may not be aware of this, but he's the all-time leading scorer in ACC history. But he wasn't a great NBA player he was okay. He played a long career, made a ton of money, played probably 10 plus years in the league. So he wasn't a disappointment per se, but certainly if he would have gone on to be a multiple time All-Star, well, his college career would have probably been looked at a little bit differently as well. So I do think, yes, Blaine Gabbert, for example, the fact that he was a bit of a bust, you could say, a top 10 pick, not all that uncommon, by the way, as we've seen in recent years. They're still trying to figure out how to evaluate the quarterback position at every level. It's a real challenge because, once again, this is a very team-dependent sport, and Luther Burden, like all the quarterbacks too, well, they're really dependent on the people around them. I just feel like Burden truly is a superstar in terms of not only did he put up huge numbers last season for Missouri in it's one of its biggest seasons in school history. Well, those weren't just, numbers that he put up against Ball State where he got a couple hundred yards receiving and padded his Heisman Trophy statistics and that type of thing. Luther Burden, time and time again, and of course, I saw it right in front of me just a couple days ago in Columbia, South Carolina, when Burden made the 4th and 5 one-handed, left-handed catch for a touchdown when Missouri absolutely had to have it. Well, go back to 4th and 17 last year against Florida. How about the game winner in the Cotton Bowl when Missouri really was stuck in the mud for most of that game offensively? Once again, when Luther Burden, when you really needed something, who was the guy you went to? It was often him. Most of the time it was him. Occasionally it was Theo Weiss too. Don't get me wrong, another guy who had a great career at Missouri that, again, speaking of things that are a little bit unfair, well, to me, Theo Weiss has been tremendous, and I think most Missouri fans would agree with that. But as the years go along, maybe does he get a little bit forgotten because of Luther Burden? I don't know. I hope not. I'll definitely be banging the Theo Weiss drum for as long as I can. And I got to bang the Luther Burden drum as well. To me, he's one of the great players in program history, and I don't think Gabe was really trying to, again, criticize or anything like that. I think he makes actually some salient points there about just, hey, the unfairness of lofty expectations. And, well, that's a good life lesson for you, kids, about happiness being a function of expectations at times. But one thing I expect is in the future, I really do believe that Burden and Cook are always going to be attached. And because of plays like I just described, of course, who threw Luther Burden the ball on the 4th and 17? Of course, as good of a pass as Brady Cook has thrown, maybe the best pass Brady Cook has thrown as well. I think that was a little bit lost because of the absolutely incredible play by Burden, too, was that was a dime by Brady Cook. Had a great view of that as well. Was a beautiful thing to see. Just such a disappointment that the defense obviously couldn't hold for a win, but still one of those moments I'll never forget. And you know what? Gird your loins here just a little bit, folks, because I'm about to get a little corny here later in the show. I promise I won't go on too long, but, actually let's just do it right now. These are two guys, by the way, Burden and Cook, technically from the St. Louis area, obviously, but in many ways, not just because they were in Missouri and Illinois technically, but grew up in totally different worlds. You had me at East St. Louis, am I right? And yet here they are. Here these two young men are together, friends, teammates. And no matter how their relationship evolves in the future, as all relationships do, they are always going to have a special bond, in my opinion. And that's a pretty beautiful thing when you think about it, and a reason to continue rooting for this team and these young men who we've gotten to know over the years. Again, I told you to gird your loins because I was about to get corny. Well, it's happening right now. To me, I talked a lot about Burden. I'm going to talk about him a little more. Cook, the ultimate fan who made his dream come true, inspirational story. And he didn't just make it. He was a vital part of one of the great teams in Missouri history as well. A legendary homecoming comeback this year. Also, Burden, a guy who could have literally gone anywhere in the country. That's not an exaggeration, but chose to stay home in the home state, I guess, if you want to call it that. He did play a little bit of high school ball in Missouri, But even though Missouri, Columbia in particular, was never really Luther Burden's home growing up, he didn't have any particular attachment to this place. Well, it certainly became his home, no doubt about that. And is Burden, is he a better player than Jeremy Maclin? Where does he actually rank all time, throwing the statistics away? Well, to me, that's a topic for the offseason. Right now, all I know is Burden's legacy as one of the greatest and most important players in Missouri history is secure. And as to the future of Missouri football, well, the transfer portal opens actually the day after the playoff field is announced. That's December 9th. So just in a few weeks here, going to have a huge impact. Let's talk about what Missouri needs in the portal. Hint, hint, quarterback's a pretty big one. Let's talk about the other positions too coming up in a second. But first, though, nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. And our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or yes, an agonizing loss as well, which is why they've created the Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and the last to leave. We see you. You know what else gives me a Mizzou fan fuel this week? Well, frankly, the moment, yes, that Brady Cook pass to Luther Burden, the one-handed catch. Holy moly, that thing juiced me up in the crowd. I can tell you that. Maybe I'll show a video there of that one day. But a 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter who you're rooting for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why a limited edition Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy is here to help you fueled for the entire season. What's your fan fuel this week? Well, whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. And by the way, just quickly, in case you missed it, a 2:30 kickoff for the Arkansas game, Missouri's final regular season ball game, a week from Saturday at Faurot Field on the SEC Network. Again, a 2:30 kickoff for Missouri and Arkansas. But looking forward to the future a little bit, and really it's going to be the near future, because December 9th, that is very short. November 18th, of course, is today's date. And here's the deal. Missouri, obviously, quarterback has got to be the number one position of concern for Missouri, because the Tigers have to get one. You can't possibly count on anyone on the current roster. And you know, I see Diego Pavia is suing the NCAA for an extra year of eligibility. I suppose there's a world where Brady Cook could make a similar move, but even that, you can't count on that, can you? You certainly can't count on Sam Horn at this point either. No offense to him, but injury-wise, it simply is what it is. Do I even need to explain? Then your other scholarship quarterback options are Aiden Glover, a true freshman on this roster who got zero playing time and was apparently fourth string behind J.R. Blood this season. And then you've got Matt Zollers, the incoming 5-star freshman, four-star perhaps, depending on where you look. I'd rather go with 5. It sounds a lot better. But regardless, Zollers thought to be an excellent player. Well, unfortunately, not only is he going to be a true freshman, as almost all of you know, Zollers suffered a pretty serious leg injury. Sounds like long-term he should be fine, but you want to throw out a guy whose ankle was pointing the wrong way just a few months ago as your starting quarterback. Again, hopefully Zollers is going to be amazing. I'm not trying to talk anybody out of him. I'm just saying, can you count on him? Regardless, Missouri has got to be among the most aggressive teams at the quarterback position this offseason. And here's the thing with quarterbacks, the reason I'm talking about this now is I gotta believe that back channels are already being opened across the country, talking to various quarterbacks. For example, heck, Thomas Castellanos, remember him, the Boston College quarterback? Well, he's already quit the team and has entered the transfer portal. Now, just because he's the first name on the market and one that Missouri fans recognize, let's set our sights a little higher. I think Castellanos is a good player. I don't know that he's a difference-making player for Missouri next season. Regardless, the Tigers better get this one right. There's no doubt about that. Also, the wide receiver room. How about that? I just mentioned, of course, how great I think Luther Burden and Theo Weiss are. Well, they were really relied upon in particular this season. How about next year? Who's the number one target on Missouri? Is it Joshua Manning? I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from Manning this fall, but it could be the breakout season coming next year for him. Speedy Johnson also left an incredible catch, by the way, against South Carolina. Give him huge credit for hitting a deep ball down the field there. But I wanted to see a little bit more from Speedy this year, too. I'll be honest. So I think wide receiver could be a definite priority in the portal as well. As for the running back position, I got to say I'm feeling pretty confident in the tandem of Jamal Roberts and Kejuan Lacey right now. Lacey got a little bit more action on a big spot in the road against South Carolina. Of course, Nate Noel took the lion's share of the work this week. But to me, obviously, Lacey's talent, I think, is pretty obvious. And even after fumbling a couple times early, the coaching staff has stuck with him because I think they know he could be a huge part of the team next season. And Jamal Roberts has really proven to be a very reliable, multi-dimensional player, I would say. Solid runner, solid in pass protection, solid as a receiver as well. That can take you a long ways. So to me, that's a pretty good combo. You've still got Tavoris Jones, a highly touted player from a few years ago. I believe the 2022 high school class still very much on the roster and has had some action before. I don't really think Missouri needs to be desperate at running back. Now, of course, as others have said, a lot of where you go, hey, it depends on who enters the market. If the offensive line crop is particularly thin, then maybe Missouri doesn't go as heavily into that position, for example. But anytime, if you're an SEC school with money to spend in the NIL space, as Missouri certainly seems to be, well, you're always going to look for big boys. The offensive linemen, the defensive linemen. Missouri has done pass rushers, of course, but I would say Missouri has done particularly well with defensive tackles in the portal. So again, a lot of it's going to depend on who's available, and it's safe to say there's going to be some big names out there and several surprising ones as well. Hopefully none off of the Missouri roster. The thing is, you never know whether you like the portal or not. I have to say it's good for content and thus me. And just a couple final quick points on the portal. I meant to mention this in my quarterback discussion, but the quarterbacks go off the board really quickly too, which is why you have to believe, again, back channels are already happening for the teams that know that they're going to be in the market for a quarterback this offseason. And there actually may be something to be said for the fact that playoff teams, again, I said the 12-team playoff field will be announced the day before before the portal opens. So that does say that maybe playoff teams are at a slight disadvantage in the portal, And I will say slight because, well, these are still basically the most powerful teams and programs in the country. I do think it evens things out a little bit, perhaps. Just, hey, if you're Missouri, maybe you can jump in to that market a little bit more quickly than others, of course. Just focus your resources is really more of the point. Again, I'm not going to go crazy with that. We haven't even seen a full cycle of the 12-team playoff and what's sure to be expanded to 16, it seems, soon. We haven't even seen a cycle of that yet, so let's not go crazy. I'm just saying there's probably a slight advantage there to the teams out of the playoff, at least all things being equal. And after a couple of days of digesting the game and also, well, all the comments on my YouTube page, the hundreds of them, quite honestly, it's interesting to see what everybody thinks. And sometimes they have great ideas and sometimes they have terrible ideas. For instance, one person thought that in retrospect, Burden, after that one-handed catch, should have actually taken a knee at the 1-yard line. This is going to be my crusade to get people to stop wanting teams to do that when they're down, when they actually need a touchdown. So we're going to get into that. And also what I think was really impressive after a second viewing, and actually something that looked even worse at second glance. Talk about all that coming up on the program. But first, FanDuel, you got to get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch during a game, you can check out stats, view the play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And the first NBA game I ever attended, 2007 NBA season, LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers at Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks. Well, this was actually the season LeBron, as a youngster with the Cavs, made the NBA Finals for the first time. They, of course, lost to the San Antonio Spurs that year. But that's just one of those things I will absolutely never forget. Well, Gametime has a new feature, by the way, where you can get exactly these type of memories called Gametime Picks that makes it so much easier to see your favorite teams play live, because Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff and shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You're going to get into the game much more efficiently and, of course, with the best prices. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. So I'm not going to say this was a huge amount of people, but I did have at least one listener say that Luther Burden should have downed the ball at the 1-yard line after his huge fourth down one-handed catch. Well, I would just say, what exactly does that even look like? Because with a minute to go in the game, about a little more than a minute to go in the game, well, South Carolina still had 3 timeouts left. So are you saying that you hope Missouri didn't score then on 1st and goal? Because the Tigers were trailing by 5. A field goal is not an option here. So then you hope what? They score on 3rd down or 4th down or something like that? Because either way, South Carolina, again, has 3 timeouts. They're obviously going to use them there. If South Carolina gets a goal line stand there, by the way, holy crap, does everybody lose their mind on Eli Drinkwitz? And rightfully so. I understand why people do this, again, against in 2022 Auburn, the classic Harrison Mevis missed field goal, I will maintain until my dying breath that regardless of the results there, Eli Drinkwitz did the right thing. But a touchdown, you can't assume a touchdown. You just can't. The numbers aren't the same thing as a field goal, which had a 99 some odd % probability chance there, especially since Mevis was a veteran kicker at that point, and we kind of thought we knew what to expect anyway. Well, again, if Mizzou were trailing by 2 instead of 5, I would see this point. I still, even in that situation, even if Missouri were, even if it was a 2-point game there, still probably a little unrealistic, I think, to expect Luther Burden or anyone else, maybe short of Jerry Rice or something, to have that level of awareness that, oh, I'm catching this ball down the sidelines one-handed. Oh, I better take a knee now. I mean, it's not like he had a lot of time to gather the football and then knee there. Go back and watch the play. I just think that was a rather unrealistic thing to expect from anyone. Now, on second viewing of the game, I have to say I think the offensive line performed pretty darn well, especially with Connor Tollison out of the game. Drake Heismeyer, I think, performed well, especially the snaps were there. There was maybe one miscommunication I can think of that perhaps he was involved in, but what do you expect in that kind of wild atmosphere? His first start ever. I thought Drake played a really, really good ball game, and I think the pass protection in general was good enough to win and score 30. Hey, I'll take that with an injured quarterback, and the run blocking was obviously excellent. Armand Mimbu in particular has just been mauling people in the run game now for 2 seasons. It's a lot of fun to watch, I'll promise you that, especially when you go back and watch some replays. Focus on the right tackle for Missouri occasionally in the run game if you want to have some fun. But unfortunately, man, the secondary for the Tigers looked even worse on my second viewing. Just about everyone was beaten at some point for a big play. So I'm not even going to bother singling out anybody because, number one, that's not really my style. But number two, I think it would be dishonest because the whole group just wasn't very good. And the tackling, oh my, the tackling, especially on the ultimate last play there for South Carolina. Offensively, what was the game-winning touchdown? Literally just not enough wrapping up. Too much hit stick stuff. If you're a Madden or NCAA football player, you know what I'm talking about. Instead of actually making a form tackle, grabbing the guy and getting him to the ground, just way too much of Missouri just trying to blast a guy or trying to hit the football, which, hey, turnovers are great at a certain point, especially with an inexperienced quarterback like Lenoris Sellers, who obviously is a talent and maybe a real problem in this conference for years to come. He's still an inexperienced guy and a guy we kind of got a little bit frazzled, I thought, in the third quarter. And obviously he had a huge fourth quarter and deserves a ton of credit for that. But to me, it was just tough, really, really tough to watch Mizzou's lack of tackling in this game and just, man, them getting beaten in the secondary time and time again. And coming up on the next episode of Locked On Mizzou, I want to talk about who is going to play in this bowl game, in my opinion, and who probably won't. Well, there's some obvious names, of course, some not so obvious as well. Let's talk about that on the next episode. Many other topics to get to as well. I'll see you then, and thanks for being an everydayer, of course, and a listener of Locked On Mizzou.